Hello, my name is Chantal Cook. I'll be hosting today's NALP webinar. With me, I've got Amanda Hamilton, who is our former CEO and our current patron. Also, the one that's labelled Jane but looks like a bloke, that's Nigel. He looks after our marketing. He'll be in the background dealing with any tech issues. So if there's anything that's any kind of tech problems or whatever that you need to talk to Nigel about, message him directly through the chat, and he'll be looking after the questions and putting in links into the chat and so on as well. So Nigel will be helping us out there in the background. And our guest today is Ryan Gregory, who's the International Manager from Finders International, and we'll be talking about having a career in probate research. Just before we do that, though, I've got a few announcements to give you. So first of all, our next webinar, jumping ahead, is June the 5th. And if you've ever felt overwhelmed in your job, that kind of feeling of, I can't put anything more on the list or I'm going to explode, then this webinar on the 5th of June is definitely one for you, because it's a webinar talking all about how to deal with overwhelm. Then in July, we have a webinar booked in already for the 11th of July, and that is with Barbary, and we'll be talking about how to convert your NALP qualifications into becoming a solicitor, if that's something that you've ever been interested in doing. So 5th of June for overwhelm and 11th of July for becoming a solicitor. Pop those in your diary and we'll be sending out more details about them soon. We'll have no webinar in August. I think it's time to have a summer holiday, and then we're back again in September. Big announcement. You are the very, very first to know that we have a date and confirmed for this year's National Paralegal Day. That will take place on Monday, 11th of November. That's Monday, the 11th of November in the evening, and that'll be at the Law Society in London. There'll be more details coming soon, but please mark your diaries, because we'd really love to see all of you for the big celebrations at this year's National Paralegal Day, 11th of November at the Law Society. Well, I'd like to welcome our guest then, Ryan Gregory, the International Manager of Finders International. So you probably know this already, as I bet you've seen them on TV, but in case you don't, Finders International is an award-winning probate research firm that traces the beneficiaries to estates, property and assets. We'll be talking a little bit about how to have a career in probate research, what it involves and what you need to know about it. So Ryan, can I welcome you along to today's NALP webinar?
Hi, thank you for having me. Hi to everyone that's watching. I have to apologise firstly just to anyone that was expecting Danny Curran, the MD of Finders. You're going to have to put up with me instead, but hopefully it will be interesting enough for everyone to stick through to the end. And yeah, once again, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So I've got some questions to get us going. First one is kind of the obvious one, really. What is probate research? What does it actually involve?
So probate is the administration and the transfer of assets previously owned by a deceased person. Then we combine that with the research. So probate research overall is assisting estate administrators and others in the probate industry just to trace and prove the claims of rightful heirs. When I joined in the industry, and I think largely it is still called probate genealogy on occasion. So then again, we're just linking the probate side of it to the genealogy side of it. I think probably your question is quite apt, because more and more we're having to do bits which aren't really genealogy related. There's a lot of investigation, there's a lot of detective work, there's sometimes a bit of DNA work as well. So research probably is the more modern interpretation of what used to be called probate genealogy.
And specifically, what does Finders do?
So Finders pretty much does that. I mean, we started tracing beneficiaries to estates, unclaimed assets, unclaimed property, as they like to call it in the US more. So traditionally within the UK, where the person passed away and where the assets are based, but we do and have grown into being quite a global presence. So we have clients overseas as well. So we're trying to find missing beneficiaries to unclaimed assets, essentially, and a lot of those would be probate estates. But over the years, Finders has diversified into other things which can aid people in the probate industry, such as just simply verifying the family tree, obtaining missing documents, be it a death certificate or a marriage certificate or a birth certificate for someone in the UK, or more complicated and a bit more expensive, someone overseas, they need a death certificate from Thailand, for example. Missing will searches to find out if someone left a will, obviously important if you're going to ascertain whether they died intestate or not. Missing asset searches, so we can work with the estate representatives to look for any assets that are due to the estate. transfer of international assets, a super complicated area of work, but we have someone that's specialized. They speak to estate administrators, and we can pull in assets from places like the US and shares missing assets. And also a part that maybe sometimes is overlooked when we talk about probate research is just reuniting families together. It's something we do on a daily basis as well, and it's kind of byproduct of what we do, but it's not to be overlooked because it is one of the nicer parts of the job.
Now, it sounds like there's all sorts of things involved. Like you mentioned private, almost like being a private investigator or something, but also then there's the legal things, and there's genealogy, and there's, well, all sorts of things. So therefore, what actual qualifications do you need to do that? Because it almost feels like you come from it from anywhere.
Well, yeah, precisely that. You can come from it from anywhere, really. Myself, my personal story is that I left school at 16 after getting AS levels. It was the first year of having to pay for uni. I didn't really have the funds for it. Had to get a job. I was living at home. I didn't go to uni. I got a couple of jobs, and then I landed a job at Finders International just by chance, really. When I was 18, I kind of stuck with the company. Kind of grew through as the company grew over the last 21 years. So you can do that. You know, we'd happily look at a school leaver who's passionate in what we do, or we'd look at somebody. We work with people in Finders who were maybe studying a law degree or halfway through their conversion, and they decided, look, I like law, but maybe it's not for me. I don't want to work the really long hours. You know, I want to do something that's maybe going to benefit people a bit more. And we speak to people where they did their modules and they touch on the probate module and they kind of stick on it, and then they're like, they look around and they're like, wow, I never really knew you guys existed. And then we interview them and they can come in. I would say when we look for people, we'll judge anyone based on their CV, but I mean, there's particular degrees that we do find interesting. I think a law degree is useful given that we work in probate. Something like a history degree or a criminology degree or history of art. We're kind of looking for someone that you don't have to have a background in law, but someone that has good lateral thinking, you know, someone that wants to pick up something, kind of pick it apart, solve the puzzle, and then kind of, you know, solve it and pass it over to the relevant people. So just someone really with a keen interest in either law, genealogy, or probate would be great.
So I guess in that case, anybody really with a paralegal qualification from NALP would be an ideal person to come in.
100%, yeah. If we see someone with NALP on their CV, you know, automatically it's going to promote anybody's interests that's looking to hire within Finders for sure.
So I know most of your staff are actually NALP members, aren't they?
They are, yeah. We became NALP members via the kind of the on-the-job experience that we've had in the probate research field. So, you know, it's pretty much something that we've been able to kind of attach to ourselves and to promote, you know, within Finders and to clients, be it a beneficiary or a solicitor, to say, look, these people are experienced and we are part of a wider group of people that share common values and similar experiences.
So although I know you've talked a little bit about kind of where you can come from and having some kind of understanding of the law is useful, is there but you know, if you haven't worked in probate at all before, is it what's a good place to go to get experience? I mean, can you literally come in with nothing, or do you need to go off and do something else first?
I would say you can literally come in with nothing. You know, if we talk of any company, I guess as a whole, there's going to be varying recruitment requirements throughout the year and throughout the various years. You know, if you happen to hit a company at the right time and they're looking for someone, and you know you're interested in that job, it's really going to help your chances. But you know, a way to get your foot in the door, maybe potentially if someone isn't hiring in our industry, you know, having had a look at your family history is going to put you quite near the top of the list. For me personally, particularly if I'm looking for a researcher, somebody that has done that has researched their family tree, that's really good for research role. But some people come to us because they want to work in our setting and they're coming from an admin background, in which case, you know, you want to be promoting your communication skills, your teamwork, your accuracy, your self-motivation and things like that. So I think it's just about considering the role that you're going for. Some of it will be potluck with the recruitment needs of the company, but kind of think about the role you're going for and kind of promote yourself based on that, really. And like I said, anyone with an interest in genealogy, when I started, when I was 18, no one really knew what genealogy was. I would tell people I was a probate genealogist, and they'd be like, "Oh, genealogist, that's interesting. Do you study rocks?" Or I was like, "No, that's a geologist." The number of times I had that conversation when I was like starting off at Finders was quite funny. But nowadays we have things like ancestry.com, and we have TV shows about it, like BBC Air Hunters and things. So I think most people probably know the difference between geology and genealogy now. But yeah, certainly if you want to kind of highlight your CV, maybe have a bit of a dig around. And you never know what you're going to find. If you don't want to go straight in for researching your family history in the traditional way, do your ancestry DNA, because I find that's a really good way to pull yourself into some interesting stories within your family, and contacting people and asking the right questions and dismissing any kind of erroneous leads. It's all this sort of things that we would certainly be looking for. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the TV and Air Hunters, so I have to ask, what's that like doing that? Is it as glamorous and as exciting as it looks? Or is it just a lot of hard work?
I have to say, I think Danny cornered myself and Amy Moyes in a pub on a team social, buttered us up with a couple of drinks maybe, then pretty much told us that we'll be fronting Air Hunters for Finders. When we joined the TV show, we kind of went into it kicking and screaming a little bit, just, something different. There's a big chunk of anxiety which comes with putting yourself out there, I think, in front of your peers as well, to be judged. I think knowing that everyone in your industry is going to see it, but then the wider TV audience, family members and friends, it is quite terrifying when they first put you in front of your open plan office and stick a TV camera in front of your face, and it's going to go out to 1 million people or something. Once you get over the nerves, it was an interesting experience. It wasn't all high glamour, as you kind of alluded to. It was a lot of hard work, to be honest. We probably filmed with the TV crew for sometimes up to 6 months of the year. Not every single case we filmed would get through to being on the TV show. We would often film a lot of cases, and then we didn't find the right social history to make it interesting for the show. Or we'd have really interesting social history, but we couldn't find a beneficiary to speak to the producers, or we didn't know enough about the deceased person. Obviously, that's the story that people want to know about. Do we have any pictures and photos? So quite a lot of the filming that we did ended up on the cutting room floor. So there was a lot of kind of late staying behind at the end of the day, doing pieces to camera when you really just want to go home and your brain is a bit fried. There was a lot of running around with the team, kind of sharing up bits of family trees, and a lot of the work that we were filming is a competitive type of work from the Bone of Vacantia list, which is the unclaimed estates. And kind of the last thing you want when you're rushing around trying to be the first person to ring a potential beneficiary is someone with a camera saying, "Hey, could you just tell me what you're doing?" Because you're trying to not look frazzled doing that, and then you're trying to speak to the beneficiaries. But it's one of these things. It was a long-term project, and every time you wrapped on a series and then waited for it to come on and you watched it back, it was always really nice. They were really good at kind of extrapolating the social history element of it. And for me personally, I'd been in the industry quite a long time, and I didn't really have the time or the inclination to think too much about the social history. And it kind of changed the way I thought about the families, and it kind of, I realized how important that is, I guess, to the people we're speaking at. But yeah, being on the TV show wasn't without its odd kind of side of it, like people DMing you on Twitter and Facebook and pretty much wherever they could, and tweeting about you, and asking you for an autograph once or twice or a selfie. It kind of happened, or like sitting on an airplane once, and kind of someone, people always think they know you because they've seen you on TV, and it's really, then you don't want to have to be that person that says, "Oh, I think you might have seen me on TV." Usually you can like brush it off because it's a bit cringy. Yes. But yeah, there were nice parts to it. It was rewarding at the end of the day, but yeah, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of things that people didn't necessarily see. Some really good stories, and sometimes stories that were probably a bit too dark to have on morning TV as well, that everyone in the office finds quite interesting, as people typically quite interested in the kind of more gory side of things. But yeah, we had to remind ourselves that we were breakfast TV.
Do you think overall that kind of TV program has actually helped not just Finders, but actually the industry as a whole to be more visible, to maybe make it easier to recruit good quality people, to make it a career that people actually want to do?
100%, yeah. I mean, I think it's helped raise the awareness of the industry. I think we still struggle internationally. I'm head of international. We still struggle internationally with convincing people overseas that we are legitimate. We still have issues within the UK, but mostly people can pull away those bricks of suspicion when they can see newspaper articles or TV shows. And on the recruitment side of things, yeah, it kind of helps get people into the industry. We used to find that our demographics were probably students back when it was on, or people that were off of their kids, or pregnant ladies, or older people. So quite often now I'm interviewing people coming out of university who are like 21, 22, and they'll probably tell me, which makes me feel a bit old, that they either watched it as kids or that their grandparents used to watch it. So it's nice to have it there, and it's good that people can then go to YouTube and see a bit of what we do. And again, like, you know, we would be speaking to beneficiaries whilst the TV show was on sometimes, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm watching you on TV. So it's really hard to kind of hold on to any suspicion when you can see someone on the BBC that you're talking to. So on that side of things, it helps massively as well.
And very briefly, who usually is it your clients? So they come directly through solicitors, or is it, say, the executor of the estate or something? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think a lot of people think when we talk about the industry, particularly if they've seen this TV show, they'll think everything comes through this government list. That's only a small part of the type of work that we do. We do have a large portion of the work that we undertake through private clients. So that would be solicitors, it will be state representatives. Often local authorities will come to us directly. There is an element where we can source cases from the public domain. So there's all these kind of ways that cases can come into finders. We have clients overseas as well. So yeah, we don't only pluck from the government list, and also we don't only work with private client solicitors. As you mentioned, it can just be an estate representative that wants to come to us and ask us to find missing beneficiaries, or simply just verify a family tree.
And for you, what's the bit that you most love about doing this work?
I have to say it is the social history now. It is these people that you can talk to, and for some reason over the years, you know, I've seen that people will just open up to you, or they were just pretty much random person at the end of the phone. Everyone's got a story at the end of the day, I think, and you know, once you hit that sweet spot with someone, you do find a lot of people do open up to you, and they start telling you about their grandparents, siblings, and you know, the black sheep in the family, and so and so went and did this, or you know, this person's estranged and gone missing, and you know, you do have a really strong connection with them between first speaking to them and then ultimately when they receive their inheritance. And you know, sometimes people, you know, jump for joy because they think of the money, and you know, Danny, my boss's phrase that always sticks in my mind is pennies from heaven. And you know, that is important to people. Like, you know, who wouldn't want some money that's ultimately coming out of the blue from someone that, you know, usually they didn't know, but also the family side of it. So I think getting involved in the stories, the social history, and just speaking to people about their ancestry, I think, you know, everyone usually that comes in as a research role really finds that the most enjoyable part of the job.
I can imagine it being very rewarding as a career.
Super rewarding as a career, yeah. I mean, look, I never thought at 18 that I would have a career coming up to almost 40, and kind of it being most, you know, what's going to ultimately be most of my working life, if not all of it. And it never gets dull. I know that sounds like something someone would just say, but you know, we get asked in interviews, you know, what do you enjoy about the job? Do you still enjoy it? And yeah, you know, after 21 years, you do learn something new literally every day. And again, that's a bit of a cliche, but you're always going to learn a different way of doing a bit of genealogy, or a different way to trace someone, or a different way to do research in however many countries there is overseas that you need to do research in. So you never stop learning. You work on cases a bit similar to like how a lawyer would work on a case when they're conducting the administration. So you do get that sense of satisfaction from opening a case, working on it as a team, so teamwork, and then closing a case out, and ultimately the beneficiaries receiving their inheritance. So yeah, super rewarding, really good job for dinner parties when you're speaking to people. There's pretty much, you never meet another probate genealogist. I think, funnily enough, I did meet one once at a gig or something, that's 1 in 21 years. And people do generally find it quite fascinating. There's not really many other jobs like it. And to be honest, out of everybody that I know and I speak to them about their job, me personally, I feel like I've got the best option other than what I hear other people doing. Horses for courses, but yeah, I do enjoy it.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, we've got a couple of questions come in, so I'm going to hand over to Nigel to ask you the questions, if that's okay. And then I've probably got one final question we'll finish off with, but let's have some questions from our audience first.
So Tanya says, how do probate laws vary between different jurisdictions, and how does that impact on being able to do the research?
It's actually a super good question. If someone came and asked that to me in an interview, I'd be like, that is particularly the type of person that's thinking to what we need. There isn't a blanket rule for succession. Even in the UK, it varies. England and Wales have their own way of doing things. Scotland has a slightly different way. Northern Ireland has a slightly different way. Ireland has a completely different way. And you realize when you research overseas, every state in the US is slightly different. Every territory in Australia is slightly different. So that's one of the top questions to ask if you're unsure, if you've received the case from someone from a jurisdiction you're not familiar with, what are the succession rules? And ultimately, when the case is ready to pay out, how is the estate divided? Because that can be something that, for instance, is very different from the way it is in England and Wales as opposed to Scotland. So it varies too much to cover everything. Essentially, though, it's going to go down the spouse issue, parent, siblings route. But again, in some jurisdictions, you would include like half-blood siblings. In other jurisdictions, you wouldn't. So there's a massive distinction between different places, because a lot of us grow up with half siblings and we count them as full siblings. But sometimes when it comes to succession rules, they're not so kind. So it's a good question. It is worth finding out on each case.
Well, let's see if there are other questions. Let's get them. What are the ethical considerations in probate research, particularly concerning privacy and sensitive information?
I think, to be honest, a lot of the ethical considerations around privacy are drawn up in the data protection rules. Finders, and I'm sure every other probate genealogy company abides by data protection. So as long as we're constantly keeping in our mind that we're not to disclose private information to anyone, then I think that keeps us in good stead. When we send out family trees to people, we'll be redacting people's full names, dates of birth, gender, pretty much, these days. Anything that could be an identifying factor to someone within a family. We don't just pass someone's contact details over to someone, although we might be asked sometimes, can you put me in touch with so-and-so? And, when you're talking about more sensitive cases, it could be that someone really doesn't want to be put in touch with anyone in their family, that's important for us to remember as well, that we're not going to offer to put someone in contact if they've explicitly told us. I really don't want that to happen. So you do have to have quite a lot of empathy in the job as a whole. Some of the situations we get into can be quite sensitive. It could be that sometimes we're telling someone that their son or daughter has passed away, which no one really wants to ever do. So just being mindful and empathetic, but also like reminding ourselves of the general data protection rules is really important, because the last thing we want to do is cross any boundaries that we're not supposed to. And I hope that answers the question.
Definitely. But as you brought up family trees, Jake Carter wants to know whether you have any technology that actually helps you to draw up the family trees, or do you do it manually like it looks like you do on the TV program?
Yeah, it's a good question as well. That's been something that I'm sure all of us have seen. We've all had to make some changes since the pandemic, and the way we draw up our family trees did change during COVID, because we had to collaborate with each other online a lot more. So as much as a lot of us used to love sticking A3 sheets of paper together, and then you have to add in a stem, so you'd get your scissors out and chop up the tree, and then stick a bit of paper in with a bit of sellotape, and everything was. I used to love that. I used to use a pencil and ruler, because I'm like, how many people do that on their day-to-day job? But yeah, inevitably now it's gone into more of like a tech version of it. So we have a software that we can plug the information into, and it generates like a really nice family tree still. So it also saves a lot of time, like transferring a handwritten family tree. and my handwriting was never really that good. You know, it does avoid the mistakes that you could make from going from a handwritten family tree to transferring it into a database. So we're skipping a step. So ultimately, it's good. But yeah, we do have software that can do that for us.
Okay. And how is AI being utilized in probate research, and does it have an impact on efficiency and accuracy?
Again, good question. You know, I think my answer now is going to be different today than it will be in 10 years' time. At the moment, AI hasn't had a massive impact on probate genealogy. There are people, there is a website in particular, one of the genealogy websites, I think it's MyHeritage, which has launched an AI tool. It's pretty much one of these AI tools where you're going to ask a question and it's going to kind of just give you similar results than you're going to get by looking through the search options. It just makes it a bit easier for you. Whether it's AI or not, it might just be answering questions or focusing some of the results. You know, maybe one day, you know, back to the TV show, you'd have people saying, you know, like, your job looks really easy, don't you just press a button and everything comes up? I was thinking, I hope we didn't make it look that easy on the TV show, but who knows, maybe one day that will happen. But I don't think anything that's AI for now, like a lot of other industries, is going to kind of avoid or negate the need for human kind of cross-referencing and checking. And yeah, for now, you can't just press a button and the whole family tree comes up. When that happens, I will be talking to you from another industry, I guess. But yeah, I think it's a long way off. Knowing how manual it usually is. I mean, you can be fortunate and you can see someone's put their family tree online or something that's kind of as kind of shortcutty as it can get. But yeah, for AI, I think we'll be probably after kind of, I don't know, I guess we're probably going to see more of an impact on probate lawyers before it comes down to the genealogists, I guess, because what we do is so organic and a lot of cross-referencing. We're not kind of producing set templates and documents and things.
Okay. I think that's all of the questions we've got, Chantal.
Lovely. Thank you, Ryan. I've just got one last question before we finish off then. Just give you a chance. Any final bit of advice you'd like to give paralegals if they're thinking about a career in probate research?
I would say hopefully you kind of picked up a vibe of, or kind of general inkling of what we're kind of about when we talk about probate research. But I would say if you're someone that likes a challenge, if you're someone that likes to get to the bottom of things, if you have an interest in law, probate or family history, then this is pretty much the ideal job for you. I kind of said at a graduate recruitment day last summer, you know, if you're someone that likes watching these kind of true crime documentaries and you kind of want to binge it because you want to know what happens at the end, or you like reading a detective novel, it's pretty much like doing that every day and getting paid for it. I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's just going onto someone's Facebook and trying to figure out, there's this picture of this person and they're saying it's their dad and you've only got, you know, happy, you know, not happy anniversary, but commemorations on this anniversary. There's a lot of information you can glean from just checking out someone's social media. So again, I always say, if you're the person that your friends come to when someone's dating someone new in your social group and you're the one that's like found out their cousin's cat's name within half an hour, then you know, it's that sort of stuff. It's kind of making it lighthearted. But if you like a challenge and you like casework and seeing something through from start to finish, and you have a kind of investigative kind of head on you, then there probably is no better job other than kind of being a detective or a police officer or something. But we get to do it from the comfort of our home, and for positive reasons as well. I should point out it's all positive tracing, so that's important to put that distinction in place between us and usual detectives.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That's Ryan Gregory, International Manager at Finders International. We'll be talking about having a career in probate research. As Nigel may have mentioned, I can't remember, this webinar will be available to members only on the NALP website for 3 months. And then for non-members, they can check it out after 3 months' time. So thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us. And I feel really inspired now. I want to go off and do a career in probate research.
Your CV.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like joining Finders. I want to join.
I did a good pitch. There you go. That's good.
You might find you suddenly get a flurry of CVs coming over in the next few weeks. So thank you so much. Just a quick reminder to everybody, our next webinar is the 5th of June, and that's talking about how to deal with overwhelm. The following one is the 11th of July, and that's with Barbary, talking about how to convert your NALP paralegal qualifications to become a solicitor. So thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. There is a feedback link in the chat. So if you've got any feedback on the webinar, please do fill that in, including if you've got topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Maybe there's a career you really fancy that we haven't talked about yet, and we can maybe help you get some information on how to get into that particular sector. So thanks very much again, Ryan Gregory, our guest from Finders International, and thank you all to all of you for joining us today for this NALP webinar on probate research. We'll hopefully see you next month.